The blood on her fingers was fresh when Austin Ward first saw her through the dusty window of the abandoned trading post, needle moving with desperate precision as she sewed something inside the lining of her calico dress. He had been tracking the Jenkins gang for 3 weeks across the Nevada desert into Idaho territory, and the last thing he expected to find in Ruby City was a woman with terror in her eyes and determination in every stitch. He pushed open the door and she gasped, dropping the needle. Their eyes met, hers the color of sage in summer, and he saw her hand move towards something hidden in her skirts. "Easy now," he said, raising both hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not here to hurt you." She studied him with the wariness of a wild creature, taking in his dusty Stetson, the worn leather vest, the Colt revolvers at his hips. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there were bruises on her wrists that made his jaw tighten. "Who are you running from?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "Why do you assume I am running?" Her voice was stronger than he expected, with an Eastern accent that did not belong in this rough mining town. "Because I have been hunting men long enough to recognize someone who is hunted." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "And because you are sewing a hiding place into your dress when you should be seeking help." She looked down at the fabric in her lap, at the small pocket she had been creating between the outer cloth and the lining. "For money no one can find," she said quietly. "Everything I have left in the world." Austin moved closer, slowly, the way he might approach a wounded horse. "How much are we talking about?" $200. She met his eyes again. "My inheritance from my aunt. The men who killed my traveling companions wanted it. I managed to hide it before they found me, but they will come back. They always come back." $200 was enough to kill for in 1883, especially in a territory where gold fever had turned reasonable men into monsters. Austin crouched down so he was at her eye level, studying the delicate features, the dark hair that had come loose from its pins, the intelligent eyes that held both fear and fierce resolve. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then seemed to decide he was worth the risk. Zara Rivers. I came from Boston to meet my uncle in Silver City, but the stage was attacked 2 days outside of town. Everyone else was killed. I played dead, and when they left, I ran. I have been hiding here since yesterday." "Austin Ward," he said. "And you are right not to trust easily. But I give you my word, Miss Rivers, that I will not let anyone harm you or take what is yours." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She picked up the needle again, and he watched as she continued her work, each stitch small and neat despite her shaking hands. "The men who attacked your stage, did you get a look at them?" "3 of them. The leader had a scar across his cheek, and he wore a silver concho belt. He laughed when he shot the driver." Austin felt ice slide through his veins. "Red Jenkins. You know him." "I am a bounty hunter, Miss Rivers. Jenkins and his brothers have a price on their heads in 3 territories. If they are the ones who attacked you, then you are lucky to be alive." She tied off the thread and bit it with her teeth, then carefully folded the bills she pulled from her bodice and slipped them into the hidden pocket. Her fingers were still stained with blood, and he realized it was not hers. "You fought back," he said, noticing the defensive wounds on her hands. "One of them tried to force himself on me. I had a hat pin." Her voice was flat, emotionless, but he could see the tremor that ran through her. "I do not know if I killed him, but there was blood." "Good," Austin said fiercely, and her eyes flew to his in surprise. "Any man who would do such a thing deserves worse than a hat pin. You did what you had to do to survive, and that is nothing to be ashamed of." She blinked rapidly, and he saw the tears she was fighting. "In Boston, ladies are not supposed to fight. We are supposed to faint and depend on men to protect us. But there was no one to protect me. So I fought." "Then you are stronger than half the men I know," he said, meaning every word. "And smarter too, sewing that pocket. Jenkins would tear this whole building apart looking for your money, but he would never think to look inside the dress itself. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. My aunt taught me. She said a woman should always have resources no one else knows about, because the world is not kind to women without means. Austin stood and walked to the window, scanning the empty street. Ruby City had seen better days, back when the gold was flowing, and miners filled every saloon and boarding house. Now it was half abandoned, with more empty buildings than occupied ones. It was a good place to hide, but also a trap if Jenkins came looking. We need to move before dark, he said. My horse is tied behind the assayer's office. Silver City is 2 days' ride from here, and your uncle will be worried. He does not know I'm coming, Zara said softly. My aunt arranged everything, but she died before she could tell him. I have his address, but I do not know if he will even remember me. I was 5 years old the last time he saw me. Austin turned back to her, seeing the fear beneath her brave exterior. She was alone in a dangerous territory, carrying everything she owned in a hidden pocket, with killers hunting her, and only the hope of a half-remembered uncle waiting at the end of the road. Then we make sure you survive long enough to find out, he said. Can you ride? I have ridden in Central Park, she said, a touch of defiance in her voice. Despite everything, Austin felt a smile tug at his lips. This will not be like Central Park, but if you can stay in the saddle, I can keep you safe. She stood, smoothing down her skirts, and he saw her wince. I twisted my ankle running yesterday. It is not broken, but it hurts to walk. How bad? Bad enough. She lifted her hem slightly, showing the swollen ankle wrapped in strips torn from a petticoat. I can manage. Austin made a decision. Wait here. I will get my horse and bring him to the back door. Be ready to move fast. He slipped out into the fading afternoon light, every sense alert for danger. The street was quiet, but that meant nothing. Jenkins could be anywhere, and if he had tracked Zara to Ruby City, he would be watching. Austin's horse, a strong bay gelding named Copper, waited patiently where he had been tied. Austin checked the saddle, loosened the reins, and led him around to the back of the trading post. The door opened as he approached, and Zara stepped out, moving carefully on her injured ankle. We will ride double until we are clear of town, he said, mounting first, and then reaching down for her. Give me your hand. She looked up at him, and he saw the moment she made the choice to trust him. Her hand was small and cold in his, but her grip was firm. He pulled her up, settling her in front of him on the saddle, and she gasped at the sudden movement. Hold on, he said, wrapping one arm around her waist to steady her. She felt fragile against him, all bones and determination, and he felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with duty or bounty hunting. They rode out of Ruby City as the sun touched the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Austin kept to the less traveled trails, avoiding the main road where Jenkins might have men watching. Zara did not speak, but he felt the tension in her body gradually ease as the miles passed, and no one pursued them. When full dark fell, he found a sheltered spot beneath an overhang of rock, hidden from the road but with a clear view of anyone approaching. Zara slid down from the horse with his help, biting her lip against the pain in her ankle. No fire tonight, Austin said, unsaddling Copper and spreading the blanket on the ground. Jenkins will be looking for smoke. I understand. Zara sank down onto the blanket with obvious relief, pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders. The desert night was already turning cold, the temperature dropping fast after the brutal heat of the day. Austin settled beside her, close enough to share body heat but careful to maintain propriety. He pulled dried beef and hardtack from his saddlebag, offering her half. It is not much, he said, but it will keep your strength up. She took the food with a murmured thanks and ate slowly, as if each bite had to be considered. Austin watched her in the starlight, noting the way shadows pooled beneath her eyes, the exhaustion that lined her face. She had been through hell, and she was still going, still fighting. Tell me about your aunt, he said, wanting to distract her from the fear and the darkness. Zara looked surprised, then thoughtful. She was my mother's sister, never married, which caused quite the scandal in Boston. She ran a dress shop and taught me everything about sewing. She said every woman should know how to support herself because husbands die and fortunes disappear, but skill lasts forever. She sounds like a wise woman. She was the wisest person I ever knew. Zara's voice caught. She got sick last winter, pneumonia. She made me promise before she died that I would go west and find my uncle, that I would not let my mother's family trap me into a marriage I did not want. Someone was pressuring you. My cousin. He is 15 years older than me and has always thought he had a claim on me because we share a name. When my aunt died and left me her savings, he became even more insistent. The money was supposed to be enough to start over, to build a new life. She touched the hidden pocket in her dress. Now it is all I have left. Austin felt anger kindle in his chest, not just at Jenkins and his gang, but at the cousin who had tried to control her, at a world that gave women so few choices. Your aunt was right to send you away, and you were brave to go. I did not feel brave, Zara admitted. I felt terrified. I still do. Brave is not the absence of fear, Austin said. It is moving forward despite the fear. And you have done that every step of the way. She turned to look at him, and even in the darkness, he could see the gratitude in her eyes. Why are you helping me? You could collect the bounty on Jenkins without worrying about a Boston seamstress with a twisted ankle. Because it is the right thing to do, he said simply, and because no one deserves to face men like Jenkins alone. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the desert, the distant cry of a coyote, the rustle of wind through sage. Austin felt hyper-aware of Zara's presence beside him, the faint scent of lavender that clung to her despite everything, the steady rhythm of her breathing. Where did you learn to track men? She asked eventually. My father was a Texas Ranger, Austin said. He taught me to read sign, to think like the men I was hunting. He died when I was 19, shot in the back by a man he had trusted. I have been doing this ever since. I am sorry about your father. So am I. But he taught me well, and I like to think he would be proud of the work I do. Austin adjusted his position, keeping his eyes on the darkness beyond their shelter. Jenkins killed a family in Carson City last month. Mother, father, and their 2 young sons. He took $30 and a gold watch. That is the kind of man we are dealing with. Zara shuddered. Then we should reach Silver City as fast as possible. We will, Austin promised. But we have to be smart about it. Jenkins knows these trails as well as I do, and he will be looking for you. Why does he care so much about $200? Surely there are easier marks. It is not about the money anymore, Austin said grimly. You survived when everyone else died. You wounded one of his men. To someone like Jenkins, that is a personal insult. He will hunt you until he settles the score, or one of you is dead. He felt Zara tremble and instinctively put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. She did not resist, instead leaning into his warmth, and Austin felt that strange sensation in his chest again, a protective fierceness that went beyond simple duty. I will not let him get to you, he said softly. I swear it. You do not even know me, Zara whispered. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Austin was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Maybe because I am tired of always being too late. I track these men, bring them to justice, but it is always after they have hurt someone. For once, I want to stop the hurt before it happens. Zara tilted her head to look up at him, and their faces were suddenly very close. You are a good man, Austin Ward. I am a man who has seen too much darkness, he said. But maybe that is why I recognize the light when I see it. She smiled then, a real smile that transformed her tired face, and Austin felt something in him that had been frozen for years begin to thaw. They took turns sleeping, Austin keeping watch while Zara dozed fitfully against him, wrapped in his spare blanket. Every sound made him alert, his hand never far from his gun, but the night passed without incident. When dawn broke over the mountains, painting the desert in shades of pink and gold, he woke her gently. "We need to move. There is a creek about 5 miles from here where we can water the horse and refill the canteens." Zara nodded, her hair a tangle around her face. She tried to stand and gasped, her injured ankle buckling. Austin caught her before she could fall, his hands on her waist. "Let me see it," he said. She hesitated, but something in his expression convinced her. She sat back down and lifted her skirt, unwrapping the makeshift bandage. The ankle was swollen and discolored, worse than it had been the day before. "You need to stay off this," Austin said, examining it carefully. "It might be more than a sprain." "I can manage," Zara said stubbornly. "I am sure you can, but you do not have to." He looked up at her. "We will ride double again today. Let your ankle rest. If we push too hard and you injure it permanently, we will be in worse trouble." She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes, but practicality won out. "Very well, but I do not want to slow you down." "You are not slowing me down. We are traveling together, which means we take care of each other." He rewrapped her ankle carefully, tearing strips from his own spare shirt to make a better bandage. His fingers were gentle despite their calluses, and he heard her sharp intake of breath when he touched a particularly tender spot. "Sorry," he murmured. "It is all right. You have a healer's touch. Just practice. I have patched up more wounds than I care to count, including my own." When her ankle was secured, he helped her mount Copper, then swung up behind her. She fit against him as if she had been made to be there, and Austin tried not to think about how right it felt to hold her this way. They reached the creek as the sun climbed higher, and Austin helped Zara down into the shade of a cottonwood tree while he tended to Copper and filled the canteens. The water was clear and cold, fed by mountain snowmelt, and he brought some back to her in his cupped hands. "Drink," he said, and she did, her lips brushing his palms in a touch that sent unexpected heat through him. "Thank you," she said, and there was something in her voice that suggested she was thanking him for more than just the water. They rested for an hour, letting Copper graze and Zara massage her ankle. Austin climbed a nearby rise to scout the trail behind them, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 3 riders, moving fast, about an hour behind them. He could not make out details at this distance, but he knew in his gut it was Jenkins and his men. He slid back down the slope and quickly gathered their things. "We have to go, now." Zara did not waste time asking questions. She let him lift her onto the horse and held tight as he mounted behind her and urged Copper into a fast trot. The gelding was tired but game, stretching out his legs as they left the creek behind. "How close are they?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the fear he could feel in her rigid posture. "Close enough. We need to make Silver City by nightfall, or find somewhere to make a stand. Can we outrun them? Not carrying double and with an injured horse already tired from yesterday's ride." Austin scanned the landscape ahead, calculating distances and possibilities. "But I know a place we can ford up if we have to. An old line shack about 10 miles north. It is defensible, and I have supplies cached there." "Is that where we are heading?" "It is our best option. If we can reach it before they spot us, we might be able to wait them out or pick them off one by one." Zara was quiet for a moment, then said, "You are planning to fight them." "If I have to, but I would rather lose them in the rocks, or convince them you are not worth the trouble." He tightened his arm around her waist. "Whatever happens, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If shooting starts, you stay down and let me handle it. Do not try to help. Do not try to be brave. Just survive. Can you do that?" "I do not want you to die protecting me," Zara said fiercely. "And I do not intend to die at all," Austin replied. "But I have been in gunfights before, and you have not. I need to know you will not distract me by putting yourself in danger. All right, she said finally. I promise. They rode hard for the next 2 hours, pushing Copper as fast as they dared. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Austin felt sweat soak through his shirt. Zara never complained, though he knew the jarring pace must be agony on her injured ankle. The line shack appeared like a mirage in the heat shimmer, a rough structure of weathered wood built into the side of a rocky outcrop. Austin urged Copper the last 100 yards and pulled him to a stop in the shade of the shack's overhang. Inside, quickly, he said, helping Zara down. She stumbled, and he caught her, half carrying her through the door. The interior was dim and musty, but it was defensible with thick walls and small windows that could be barred from inside. Austin settled Zara on a rough bunk in the corner, then went back for Copper, leading the gelding into the small lean to that served as a stable. There was hay in the cache he had mentioned, and water in a sealed barrel. He worked quickly, knowing every second counted. Inside again, he pulled weapons from the hidden storage space beneath the floorboards. 2 rifles, extra ammunition, a shotgun. He checked each one methodically, his movements efficient with long practice. Can you shoot? He asked Zara. I have never tried. Then you are about to learn. He brought her one of the rifles, showing her how to hold it, how to sight along the barrel. Point, aim for the center of what you want to hit, and squeeze the trigger gently. The kick will bruise your shoulder, but it is better than being defenseless. Zara took the rifle with shaking hands. I do not know if I can shoot a person. You stabbed one with a hat pin, Austin reminded her gently. This is the same principle, just more distance. And remember, these men murdered everyone on your stage. They will not hesitate to kill you. She nodded, her jaw setting with determination. Show me again. He worked with her for 20 minutes, drilling her on the basics until she could load and aim with something approaching competence. It was not much, but it might be enough to save her life if things went wrong. The sound of horses brought his head up. Austin moved to the window and peered through the gap in the shutters. 3 riders were approaching cautiously, fanning out as they neared the shack. The leader wore a silver concho belt that glinted in the sunlight. Jenkins, Austin confirmed, his voice flat. Stay low and stay quiet. Maybe they will pass by. But Jenkins reined in about 50 yards from the shack, his hand raised to stop his companions. He was a big man, heavy-shouldered and mean-looking, with the scar Zara had described running from his eye to his jaw. Ward, Jenkins called out. I know you are in there. I can see your horse in the lean-to. Austin cursed under his breath. So much for the element of surprise. And I know you have the girl, Jenkins continued. The pretty little Boston lady with my money in her pocket. You send her out. We will let you ride away. No hard feelings. This does not have to be your fight. Austin glanced at Zara, saw the fear in her eyes but also the trust. She believed he would not hand her over, and he would die before he proved her wrong. The lady is under my protection, Austin called back, and that money is hers by right. You murdered innocent people for it. The only place you are going is to a noose. Jenkins laughed, a harsh sound that carried across the dusty ground. Big talk from a man who is outnumbered and outgunned. My brother is bleeding because of that little wildcat. She owes us blood, Ward. And we always collect our debts. Then come and try, Austin said, his voice cold as winter. But know that I will kill the first man through that door. There was a long silence. Austin could see Jenkins conferring with his men, gesturing toward the shack. They were planning their approach, trying to decide whether Austin was bluffing. The decision came suddenly. One of Jenkins' men spurred his horse forward, firing his pistol as he charged. Austin waited until he was 20 yards away, then put a rifle shot through his chest. The man toppled backward off his horse, hitting the ground hard and not moving. One down, Austin said quietly. 2 to go. Jenkins and his remaining brother took cover behind the rocks, and for several minutes there was silence. Then a shot cracked out, splintering wood near Austin's head. He ducked back, scanning for the shooter. "He is on the ridge," Zara said, her voice remarkably calm. "I saw the smoke." "Good eyes." Austin moved to a different window, trying to get an angle on the shooter. Another shot rang out, this one punching through the shutter and burying itself in the far wall. "They are going to try to pin us down and then rush the door," Austin said. "When I give the word, I need you to shoot at anything that moves outside. You do not have to hit them. Just make them keep their heads down." Zara nodded, her knuckles white on the rifle. She was terrified. Austin could see it, but she was holding together through sheer force of will. The shooting continued for another 10 minutes, Jenkins and his brother taking turns keeping them pinned while they maneuvered closer. Austin returned fire carefully, conserving ammunition, trying to find an opening that would let him end this. Then he saw Jenkins moving through the rocks, using the terrain to approach the blind side of the shack. Austin fired, but the angle was wrong and the bullet sparked off stone. Jenkins ducked back, and Austin cursed. If the outlaw made it to the side wall, he could potentially set fire to the shack or force his way in through the thin wooden slats. "I am going out," Austin said suddenly. "What?" Zara's voice was sharp with panic. "You said to stay inside." "I said for you to stay inside. If I let him get to that wall, we are finished. I have to push them back." He checked his pistols, making sure both were fully loaded. "Keep shooting through the front window. Make them think we are both still here." "Austin, please." He turned and gripped her shoulders, looking into her frightened eyes. "Trust me. I have done this before, and I know what I am doing. Just keep your head down and keep shooting." Then, before she could argue further, he slipped out the back door and into the blazing afternoon heat. The rear of the shack was sheltered by the rocky outcrop, giving him cover as he circled around toward where he had last seen Jenkins. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. This was what he did, who he was. Hunter and hunted, the ancient dance playing out under the desert sun. He heard Jenkins before he saw him, the scrape of boots on stone. Austin moved silently, using every bit of cover until he had a clear view of the outlaw's back. Jenkins was focused on the shack, his pistol raised, waiting for his brother to provide covering fire. "Drop it," Austin said quietly. Jenkins spun, bringing his gun around, and Austin shot him. The outlaw staggered, looking down at the red bloom spreading across his chest with something like surprise. His pistol slipped from his fingers. "Should have taken the warning," Austin said, his voice empty of emotion. Jenkins fell to his knees, then forward onto his face. Austin waited, making sure he was not going to get up, then turned his attention to the remaining brother on the ridge. The man had seen what happened and was running for his horse, deciding that revenge was not worth dying for. Austin let him go. One man running scared could spread the word that this territory was not safe for the Jenkins gang. The law would catch up with him eventually, or some other bounty hunter would collect that reward. He walked back to the shack and knocked on the door. "It is over. You can open up." The door flew open, and Zara stood there, the rifle still in her hands, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with relief. "You are alive." "I gave you my word I did not intend to die," Austin said, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the last hour crash over him. "And I keep my promises." She set the rifle aside, and then, without warning, threw her arms around his neck. Austin caught her reflexively, his arms going around her waist, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other while the adrenaline drained away. "I was so frightened," Zara whispered against his chest. "I heard the shot and I thought—" "Hush," Austin said, stroking her tangled hair. "I am fine. We are both fine. It is over." She pulled back slightly to look up at him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. Without thinking, he wiped them away with his thumb, his touch gentle. Their faces were close, so close, and he could see gold flecks in her sage green eyes, could feel her breath warm on his skin. "Zara," he said, her name rough in his throat. She rose on her toes, mindless of her injured ankle, and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and flavored with salt from her tears, and Austin felt something in his chest crack open. He had been alone for so long, moving from town to town, from bounty to bounty, never staying anywhere long enough to matter to anyone. But in that moment, with this brave, brilliant woman in his arms, he felt like he had finally come home. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara's cheeks were flushed. "I am sorry. I should not have. Do not apologize," Austin said fiercely. "Not for that. Never for that." She smiled, tremulous but genuine. "I have never kissed a man before. Was it all right?" "It was perfect." He cupped her face in his hands, his calloused palms rough against her smooth skin. "You are perfect." They stood like that for a long moment, the outside world forgotten, just the two of them in the doorway of a dusty line shack in the middle of nowhere. Then Austin's practical nature reasserted itself, and he reluctantly let her go. "We should move before that last one decides to come back with reinforcements," he said. "Can you ride?" "I can do anything if you are with me," Zara said, and the simple faith in her voice made Austin's throat tight. They gathered their things, and Austin buried Jenkins and his brother in shallow graves marked with stones. It was more than they deserved, but he could not leave bodies to rot in the desert. It was not civilized, and despite everything, Austin still believed in civilization. Copper was rested and watered, and they set out again in the late afternoon, this time heading directly for Silver City. The danger was past, and Austin allowed himself to relax slightly, his arm around Zara feeling less like protection and more like where it belonged. "What will you do after you deliver me to my uncle?" Zara asked as they rode. "I have not thought that far ahead," Austin admitted. "Turn in the bounty on Jenkins, I suppose. Find the next job. That sounds lonely. It is the life I chose. Does it have to be?" She twisted slightly to look at him. "Could you not choose something different?" Austin was quiet for a long time, watching the sun descend toward the mountains. "I have been doing this for 10 years, Zara. It is all I know. I would not be any good at being a shopkeeper or a ranch hand. This is who I am." "I think you are more than just a bounty hunter," Zara said softly. "You are a good man who protects people who cannot protect themselves. There are many ways to do that." "Like what?" "Like being a town marshal, or a range detective, or even a private investigator." She settled back against him. "My aunt always said that if you do not like the path you are on, you can choose a different one. It is never too late to change direction." Austin thought about that as they rode, about what it might mean to stay in one place, to build something instead of always tearing down the evil he found. It was a seductive idea, especially with Zara in his arms, her warmth seeping into the cold places inside him. They reached Silver City just as the last light was fading from the sky. It was bigger than Ruby City, a real town with a main street lined with businesses, several saloons, a hotel, and even a small church. Austin felt Zara stiffen as they rode in, her nervousness returning. "What if he does not remember me?" she asked. "What if he does not want me here?" "Then you will figure out something else," Austin said firmly. "You are resourceful and skilled and brave. You will survive, whatever happens. Will you stay?" The question was quiet, almost hesitant. "At least until I know if he will take me in." "I will stay as long as you need me," Austin promised, meaning every word. They found the address Zara's aunt had written down, a modest house on a side street with a neatly kept garden. Austin helped Zara down from the horse and supported her as she limped up to the door. She knocked, and they waited. The man who answered was in his 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. He looked at Zara with confusion, then recognition dawned across his face. "Little Zara? Sarah's daughter?" "Yes, Uncle Thomas." "I am sorry to arrive unannounced, but Aunt Martha sent me. She died this winter, and I had nowhere else to go." Thomas Rivers' face creased with sorrow. "Martha's gone? Oh, my dear girl, I am so sorry. Come in, come in. You look exhausted." He noticed Austin for the first time. "And who is this?" "Austin Ward," Austin said, offering his hand. "I helped your niece get here safely. There was some trouble on the road." Thomas shook his hand, his grip firm despite his age. "Then I owe you a debt of gratitude. Please, both of you come inside. You must be hungry and tired." The house was small but comfortable, and Thomas's wife Emma bustled about getting them settled, bringing water for washing and food for eating. Over a simple but hearty meal, Zara told her story, with Austin filling in the details she was too modest to mention. Thomas listened with growing horror, then anger. "Those animals! I am grateful you were there, Mr. Ward. I cannot imagine what might have happened if you had not found her." "Your niece is stronger than you might think," Austin said, watching Zara across the table. "She survived when most people would have given up." "Martha raised her well," Thomas agreed. "Just like her aunt, determined and clever." He turned to Zara. "Of course you will stay here with us. This is your home now, for as long as you want it." Austin saw the relief wash over Zara's face, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. She had made it. She was safe, with family who wanted her, in a town where Jenkins' gang could not touch her. But as Emma showed Zara to the guest room and Thomas offered Austin a place to sleep in the barn, Austin felt something hollow open in his chest. He had done his job. Zara was safe. There was no reason for him to stay any longer, except that he did not want to leave. He lay awake in the barn that night, listening to Copper move in the stall nearby, staring up at the ceiling and trying to figure out what he was feeling. He had known Zara for less than 3 days. It was ridiculous to feel this connected to someone he had just met. Ridiculous to imagine that she felt the same way. But he remembered the way she had kissed him, the trust in her eyes, the way she fit against him as if they had been made to be together. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, his aunt had been right. Maybe it was not too late to choose a different path. In the morning, he found Zara in the garden, sitting on a bench with her injured ankle propped up. She looked better after a night's sleep and a real bath, her hair clean and neatly braided, wearing a borrowed dress that Emma had provided. "You are leaving," she said as he approached. It was not a question. Austin sat beside her, close but not touching. "I need to turn in the bounty on Jenkins, and I have other jobs waiting." "Of course." Her voice was carefully neutral. "You have your own life. I cannot expect you to stay just because I wish you would." He turned to look at her, studying her profile in the morning light. "Do you wish I would stay?" Zara met his eyes, her own shimmering with unshed tears. "Yes, but I know that is selfish of me. You have been more than kind already. I have no right to ask for more." "What if I want to give you more?" Austin said, his heart pounding. "What if I do not want to leave?" "Then why are you?" she asked, a spark of anger flashing through the sadness. "Why are you standing up to go if you do not want to?" "Because I do not know how to be anything except what I am," Austin said honestly. "I have been alone for so long. I do not know how to be with someone. I do not know how to build a life instead of just tracking down the men who destroy them." Zara reached out and took his hand, her fingers threading through his. "So learn. Stay here at least for a while. See if maybe there is something worth staying for." "You are worth staying for," Austin said fiercely. "That has never been in question." "But I have nothing to offer you, Zara. No home, no steady income. Nothing but a reputation and a horse and guns I am too good at using." "I do not need things," Zara said. "I need you. I know we have not known each other long, but I feel something when I am with you. Something I have never felt before, and I think you feel it too." Austin closed his eyes, battling between what he wanted and what he thought was right. "You deserve better than a drifter who makes his living hunting men." "Let me decide what I deserve," Zara said, steel in her voice. "I am not some helpless flower who needs to be protected from hard choices. I know my own mind, and I know what I want. The question is, do you have the courage to reach for something different than what you have always known? He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful and brave and had somehow seen past the hard exterior he showed the world to the lonely man underneath. She was offering him something he had not even realized he wanted until he met her. A chance at a real life with roots and connections and someone to come home to. I am afraid, he admitted quietly. Afraid I will fail you. Afraid I do not know how to be what you need. Then we will figure it out together, Zara said, squeezing his hand. I am afraid too. Afraid you will leave and I will never see you again. Afraid that I am just a job to you, someone you helped because it was the right thing to do. But I would rather risk being hurt than never know what we could be. Austin made his decision. He pulled her close and kissed her, slow and deep, pouring everything he could not say into that kiss. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I will stay, he said. I will turn in the bounty, settle my affairs, and I will come back. And then we will see if a bounty hunter can learn to be something else. You will come back? Zara asked, needing the reassurance. I swear it. On my father's grave, on everything I hold sacred, I will come back to you. She believed him. He could see it in her eyes, the trust and hope and something else, something that made his heart race. Maybe it was too soon to call it love, but it was the beginning of love, the seed that could grow into something strong and lasting if they tended it carefully. Austin left that afternoon, but this time it felt different. He was not riding away from something, but toward something, toward a future that included Zara and Silver City and the possibility of building instead of destroying. He rode to Carson City and turned in the bounty on Jenkins and his dead brother. The reward was substantial, more than he usually collected in 6 months. The sheriff counted out the money, mostly in gold coins, and Austin carefully divided it into 3 portions. One for immediate expenses, one for savings, and one for something he had in mind. He visited the general store and bought supplies, including a good dress length of deep green fabric he thought would match Zara's eyes. At the jeweler, he spent a careful hour examining rings before selecting one with a simple gold band and a small but perfect emerald. It was not ostentatious, but it was beautiful, and he could imagine it on Zara's finger. He met with the territorial marshal and asked about job opportunities, explaining that he was thinking of settling down. The marshal was surprised but pleased, noting that Silver City could use a competent lawman if Austin was interested. The current deputy was planning to retire, and they had been looking for someone with experience. The pay was not much, but it was steady, and it came with a small house on the edge of town. Austin told him he would think about it, but in his heart he had already decided. This could work. He could make this work. He was 3 days getting back to Silver City, pushing Copper hard because he could not stand to be away from Zara any longer than necessary. When he rode into town in the late afternoon, his heart was pounding with anticipation and nerves. Thomas Rivers was working in his garden when Austin arrived. He straightened, shading his eyes against the sun, then smiled. Mr. Ward, we wondered if you would return. Is Zara here? Austin asked, dismounting. In the kitchen with Emma, helping with the preserves. Thomas studied him shrewdly. You look like a man with something on his mind. I need to speak with your niece, sir, and with you if you have a moment. Thomas set down his gardening tools and gestured toward the house. Let us go inside. This sounds important. They found Zara and Emma in the kitchen, surrounded by jars of strawberry preserves. Zara looked up as they entered, and her face lit up with such joy that Austin felt his breath catch. She was wearing the borrowed dress, her hair up in a simple knot, her hands stained red from the berries, and she had never looked more beautiful. You came back, she said, wonder in her voice. I promised I would, Austin said, his eyes locked on hers. Emma looked between them and smiled knowingly. Thomas, I think we should give these young people some privacy. Actually, madam, I would like you both to hear what I have to say, Austin said. It concerns your family. They settled in the small parlor, Zara sitting close to Austin on the sofa, her hand finding his as if by instinct. He could feel her trembling slightly, with nerves or anticipation, he was not sure. I have spent the last 3 days putting my affairs in order, Austin began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I turned in the bounty on Jenkins, settled some debts, and had some conversations about my future. And I realized something. I realized that I have been running from something for 10 years, ever since my father died. I told myself I was hunting justice, but really, I was just moving so I did not have to face how lonely I was. He looked at Zara, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. And then I met you, and everything changed. You made me want to stop running. You made me want to build something instead of always tearing down. So I am here to ask if you will let me stay. Let me try to be the kind of man who deserves you. Austin, Zara whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. You do not have to prove anything to me. You already are that man. There is more. Austin took a deep breath and turned to Thomas. Sir, I know I have not known your niece long. I know by all conventional standards it is too soon to be saying this, but I have never been one to follow conventions, and I do not want to waste time pretending I feel less than I do. I am in love with Zara, and I would like your permission to court her properly, with the intention of asking her to marry me if she will have me. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at his niece. Zara, what do you want? I want him to stay, Zara said, her voice clear and certain. I want a chance to see where this goes. And yes, it is fast, but I have learned that life is too short to waste on hesitation. I watched Aunt Martha wait her whole life for the safe choice, and she ended up alone. I do not want that. I want to be brave enough to reach for what I want. Then you have my blessing, Thomas said, smiling. Both of you. Emma and I met and were engaged within a month. When you know, you know. And it is clear you too know. Austin felt relief and joy flood through him. He turned to Zara and pulled the small box from his pocket. This is not a proposal, not yet. We need time to really know each other, to build a foundation. But I wanted you to have this as a promise that I am serious, that I am here and I am staying, and when the time is right, I will ask you properly. He opened the box, revealing the emerald ring. Zara gasped, touching it with one finger as if afraid it might disappear. It is beautiful, she breathed. It reminded me of your eyes, Austin said, and of hope, which is what you gave me. She threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at the same time, and Austin held her tight, feeling the last pieces of his armor finally fall away. He was done running. He was home. The next weeks fell into a pattern that felt both strange and wonderful to Austin. He took the job as deputy marshal, moving into the small house that came with the position. It needed work, repairs, and cleaning and furnishing, and Zara spent her days helping him make it livable while also working with Emma to establish her own dressmaking business. She was talented, Austin discovered watching her work. Her stitches were tiny and perfect, her designs elegant but practical, suited to the frontier women who became her first customers. Within a month, she had more orders than she could handle, and Emma was helping her find apprentices. Austin threw himself into his new role with the same intensity he had brought to bounty hunting, learning the rhythms of the town, getting to know the residents, handling disputes and minor crimes with a firm but fair hand. It was different from tracking desperados across the territory, but he found he liked being part of a community, liked making things better instead of just cleaning up the wreckage. And every evening he would walk to Thomas and Emma's house and sit with Zara on the porch, talking about their days, their dreams, their fears. They held hands and stole kisses and slowly, carefully built something real between them. 2 months after he returned to Silver City, Austin took Zara on a picnic up into the hills above town. It was a beautiful September day, the aspens turning gold and the air crisp with the promise of autumn. They spread a blanket under a tree and ate the lunch Emma had packed, talking and laughing as if they had known each other for years instead of months. When they finished eating, Austin stood and offered Zara his hand. "Walk with me?" She smiled and let him pull her up. Her ankle had healed completely, and she walked easily beside him as they climbed to a rocky outcrop with a view of the whole valley. Silver City was spread below them, small and neat, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving about their business. "It is beautiful up here," Zara said, standing close to his side. "It is," Austin agreed, but he was looking at her, not the view. His heart was pounding so hard he wondered if she could hear it. "Zara, we have known each other for 4 months now. 4 months of learning who you are, how you think, what makes you laugh, and every day I fall more in love with you." She turned to face him, her eyes shining. "Austin, let me finish," he said gently. "Please, I need to say this right." He took both her hands in his. "You are the strongest, bravest, most amazing woman I have ever met. You survived things that would break most people, and you did it with grace and courage. You built a life here from nothing, and you made me believe I could do the same. You gave me a home, Zara. Not just a house, but a real home in your heart." He dropped to one knee, pulling the emerald ring from his pocket. Zara's free hand flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "I know I am not perfect," Austin continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I am still learning how to be part of something bigger than myself. But I promise you, I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you. I will protect you and cherish you and love you with everything I have. Zara Rivers, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said immediately, dropping to her knees beside him and throwing her arms around his neck. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, the emerald catching the light. Then he kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Zara said, "I love you, Austin Ward. I have loved you since that first day when you promised to keep me safe, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "Impossible," Austin said, cupping her face in his hands. "You are the best decision I ever made." They were married 6 weeks later in the small Silver City church, with Thomas giving Zara away and Emma weeping happy tears. Half the town turned out for the ceremony, and the celebration lasted well into the night. Austin wore his best suit, feeling awkward in the formal clothes, but the look in Zara's eyes when she saw him made every moment of discomfort worth it. And Zara wore a dress she had made herself, cream-colored silk with delicate embroidery and tiny pearl buttons. She was so beautiful, Austin's breath caught when he saw her walking down the aisle toward him, her face radiant with joy. They said their vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. Austin slipped a simple gold band onto Zara's finger to match the emerald engagement ring, and she did the same for him. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Austin kissed her to the sound of cheering and applause. Their wedding night was spent in the little house Austin had fixed up, which was now their home. He carried Zara over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the bedroom he had furnished with a new bed and handmade quilts. "Mrs. Ward," he said, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Zara said, reaching up to pull the pins from her hair. It fell in dark waves around her shoulders, and Austin caught his breath at the sight. "Are you going to just stand there, or are you going to kiss your wife?" He closed the distance between them and did exactly that, and everything that followed was tender and passionate and perfect. They learned each other slowly, with gentle hands and whispered words, building intimacy as carefully as they had built everything else between them. Afterward, lying tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Austin traced patterns on Zara's bare shoulder and marveled at the twists of fate that had brought them together. "What are you thinking?" Zara asked sleepily, her head pillowed on his chest. "That I am the luckiest man alive," Austin said honestly. "That I almost missed this because I was too afraid to stop running. Thank God I found you sewing that pocket into your dress." Zara laughed softly. "For money, no one can find. I was so terrified that day. And then you walked through that door, and somehow I knew everything would be all right." "It will be," Austin promised, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I will make sure of it. You and me, we are going to build something beautiful here." And they did. Over the next years, they became cornerstones of the Silver City community. Austin's reputation for fairness and competence led to him being elected sheriff, and he served with distinction, keeping the peace and making the territory safer. Zara's dressmaking business flourished, and she eventually opened a proper shop on Main Street, employing 4 seamstresses and taking on apprentices who wanted to learn the trade. They built a bigger house on the edge of town with a garden that Zara tended and a barn for the horses Austin raised as a side business. Copper lived out his days in comfort, retired from hard riding, and they got new horses for the work that needed doing. 14 months after their wedding, Zara gave birth to their first child, a boy they named Samuel after Austin's father. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn determination, and Austin held him with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the fierce protective love that flooded through him. "He is perfect," Zara said from the bed, tired but glowing. "Just like his father." "I am not perfect," Austin said, unable to tear his eyes away from the tiny face. "But I will do my best to be a good father to him, to teach him honor and justice and kindness." "I know you will," Zara said confidently. "You are the best man I know, Austin Ward." 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Grace, who had her father's dark hair and her mother's gentle spirit. And 3 years after that, another son, Thomas, named for Zara's uncle who had welcomed them both with open arms. The house was full of laughter and noise and love, and Austin sometimes had to pinch himself to believe it was real. He would come home from a long day enforcing the law to find Zara in the kitchen making dinner, the children playing nearby, and feel such contentment that it was almost painful. "What did I do to deserve this?" he asked her one evening, watching her rock baby Thomas to sleep while Samuel and Grace played with their wooden toys by the fire. "You were brave enough to choose something different," Zara said simply. "To believe that a bounty hunter could become a husband and father, to take a chance on love. Best gamble I ever took," Austin said, pulling her close for a kiss. Thomas Rivers and his wife Emma remained an important part of their lives, doting grandparents who spoiled the children and supported Austin and Zara through all the challenges of building their life together. When Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72, Austin and Zara grieved the loss of the man who had given them both a home and a chance. Emma lived another 15 years, long enough to see all 3 of Austin and Zara's children grown and starting families of their own. When she died, surrounded by the family that loved her, it was Zara who held her hand and thanked her for everything she had done. The years passed, as years do. Silver City grew from a rough mining town into a proper city, with schools and churches and businesses. Austin served as sheriff for 20 years before retiring, training a younger man to take his place. He still consulted on difficult cases, his reputation as a tracker and lawman earning respect throughout the territory. Zara's dress shop became one of the most successful businesses in Silver City, and she trained dozens of young women in the seamstress trade, giving them the same independence and options that her aunt had given her. She never forgot the hidden pockets she had sewn into her dress that desperate day, and she made sure all her apprentices knew how to create them, passing on the wisdom that women needed resources of their own. They grew old together, Austin and Zara Ward, their love deepening with each passing year. They sat on the porch of their house in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset over the mountains, talking about their children and grandchildren, remembering the journey that had brought them together. "Do you ever regret it?" Austin asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. Marrying a former bounty hunter instead of someone more refined? Zara laughed, the same laugh that had captivated him 40 years earlier. Not for a single moment. You gave me adventure and love and a life more wonderful than I ever imagined. How could I regret that? I was so afraid that day I first saw you, Austin admitted. Afraid you would see through me to all the dark things I had done, all the violence I had been part of. But you looked past all of that and saw the man I could become. I saw the man you already were, Zara corrected gently. You just needed someone to believe in you. She squeezed his hand. We saved each other, Austin. I was running from a life I did not want, and you were running from loneliness. And we found each other at exactly the right moment. For money no one can find, Austin said, smiling at the memory. That is what you told me when I asked what you were doing, and I think maybe you were right, but not about the money. The real treasure was something no one could take from us. It was the life we built together, the love we found. You are getting philosophical in your old age, Zara teased, but her eyes were bright with tears. But yes, that is exactly right. We found something precious, and we held on to it with both hands. And look at what we created. They looked out at the town spread before them, at the children and grandchildren who filled their lives with joy, at the legacy they had built together. Samuel had followed his father into law enforcement and was now the territorial marshal. Grace had taken over the dress shop, expanding it into a successful business that supplied clothing throughout the territory. Thomas had become a rancher, building his own dynasty on the land his parents had helped him buy. We did good, Austin said, his voice rough with emotion. Damn, we did good. We did, Zara agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. And we are not done yet. We still have years ahead of us, my love. More sunsets to watch, more grandchildren to spoil, more life to live. And they did. They lived to see their great-grandchildren born, to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by the huge extended family they had created. They remained partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other through illness and loss, celebrating victories and milestones together. When Austin finally passed away at the age of 78, peacefully in his sleep with Zara holding his hand, the entire territory mourned. He was remembered as a lawman who had brought justice and stability to a wild land, as a husband who had loved his wife with unwavering devotion, as a father and grandfather who had built a legacy of honor and service. Zara lived 2 more years without him, surrounded by the family they had created, still working in her shop because her hands needed to stay busy. She died on a spring morning, sitting in her garden among the flowers she loved, and those who found her said she was smiling as if welcoming something long awaited. They were buried side by side in the Silver City Cemetery, their headstones simple but elegant. The inscriptions read, Austin Ward, beloved husband, father, and protector, and Zara Ward, beloved wife, mother, and friend. But everyone who knew their story understood that those simple words could not capture the depth of what they had shared. Their children made sure the story was passed down through the generations, the tale of how a desperate woman sewing a secret pocket had been found by a bounty hunter looking for meaning, and how they had built a love strong enough to last a lifetime. It became a legend in Silver City, proof that even in the hardest times, in the wildest places, love could flourish and grow and create something beautiful. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, people walking past the old Ward house swore they could see 2 figures on the porch, holding hands and watching the sunset, their love transcending even death itself. Whether it was truth or fancy, no one could say, but everyone agreed that if any love could last forever, it would be the love between Austin and Zara Ward, the bounty hunter and the seamstress who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built a life that became the stuff of legend. Their story ended not with gunfire or tragedy, but with peace and fulfillment and the knowledge that they had lived well and loved completely. They had taken the broken pieces of their individual lives and woven them together into something whole and beautiful, a tapestry of love and commitment that would inspire generations to come. And in that little hidden pocket that Zara had sewn so desperately that day in the abandoned trading post, the pocket meant for money no one could find, they had discovered something far more valuable. They had found each other, and in finding each other, they had found home.